Welcome to the Wisdom Circle. To subscribe or follow us on your favorite podcast platforms, please visit us at www.thewisdomcircle.com.
I knew of Tony for years because he was the Budweiser, and if you're talking about greatest of all time, and some of the greatest Bud commercials of ever, they were done under Tony's time. And so I always had a great admiration for him. And then you went off and produced Broadway. I don't know how successful you were at that, but the fact that you did it
right
was really, I thought, boy, he is more than a beer marketer. He is some of the understand. So I thought those two things were important. And then because I knew Ray a little bit better, his office was next to mine, and he was half the time he was in New York and half the time was me, but taking on the RSNs. And then I learned that he ran an agency for a period of time and did all of these other things. And so, how did you guys connect?
That's a good one. Well,
this it might have been if it's been already covered.
Never
by.
No one's ever asked that question.
Go ahead, Ray. I'll let you start.
Well, we talk about it that we go back 46 years, but no one's ever said, what happened or how and why are you guys still talking to each other today? Tony, we'll ham and egg this, but in June of 1978, I walked into BBDO on the 12th floor of 383 Madison Avenue, which now, a sidebar, connects to the Long Island Railroad through the Grand Central connection. And if I tell you the days I would walk to BBDO and freeze my buns off from Long Island Railroad, the fact that I could go right up into the building, good Lord. But so I walked into 383. I was the new kid on the block. Bob Levinson, a name you may know, was running the buying at that time. And he put me in an office with Tony, right? And Tony was, the buyer. He's already a buyer. I was an assistant buyer. And, we met. He was working on it. Well, I started on the Campbell Soup account, and Tony was working on Dodge, Chrysler.
No, I actually spent a lot of time on Campbell and GE and Hilton Hotels and a couple other things. But what's interesting, John, is so we became friends. Then Ray went to the sales side, so we were on the other side of the desk. But and Ray will remember the year, Raycom, which was a regional syndication network, was looking for a head of sales. And of course, when I say this, it makes me cringe today because as I've gotten older, but they were talking to people, which I would say career had peaked, but they knew a lot of people with the ad agency people. And I said to them somewhat, probably obnoxiously, well, why don't you get someone who knows all those people, but is a little younger and his career's going like this, have a little bit more of a fresh perspective. And they said, well, you have an idea? And I said, yeah, this guy, Ray Warren. Now, I had said to Ray, hey, would you be interested in leaving ABC sales? Long story short, he's intrigued. He gets the job, becomes the CEO of Raycom, and the rest is history, at least outside that part of the wall. So we just kept connected. And just, we used to, when we both lived in New York full time, when I left Anheuser-Busch and started to produce some Broadway shows, I moved back to Manhattan and loved living in the city. And I had grown up outside the city in north central New Jersey. And we would go to a place called, what was the Italian place, Ray, on 79th in Amsterdam?
Gosh. Yeah. I forget in the moment. I don't want to start Googling, but.
No, it'll come to me probably.
Yeah.
But they had black leather couches and not that big. And we would go in there and we both said, we can say anything to each other about life, business, whatever, and know it was within the confines of that circle of trust. And so that's, and I'll say it showed you how no relationship. We had a little hiccup when Ray turned 60. I was doing Magic Bird on Broadway, not Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. And he was having his 60th. I got so caught up, it was a preview, whatever, I totally forgot about Ray's birthday. And he held it against me for a little bit, but we got over it. thanks to his wife Peggy, who said, "I think he's got a lot on his mind," which I did at the time. Give him a break, which also is a wisdom circle lesson, which is, we all going to have a little disagreement with our friends, our family. Give the person a break a little bit. But that's sort of how we met. The one thing I wanted to ask you because because a lot of our young people, I think, that listen, uh, we're trying to understand this generation. I never had children. Ray has three children, and now, daughters-in-laws, and sort of understand their perspective on life. And I wonder if we're going to have people in the future that will work somewhere for 45 years. I worked at Anheuser-Busch 26 years. And I'm sure there were times that you went or were teased by something. So what is it that makes someone stay 45 years at the same place? And what at times did you have to demand from your management to make you still stay there for 45 years?
I think that staying at any company that long, even when I worked, but clearly now, that's really very much a unicorn. I think that that's pretty rare. And the time that I started running the marketing of the television network to the time I actually ended marketing network, and there was all those things that I described that were add-ons to it, but that was sort of the through line of what I did. People would ask me, how did you do that same job for 25 years? And I said, I didn't do the same job any more than 1 year at a time.
Yeah.
Because the world kept changing so much, the shows kept changing, the people kept changing, and everything else. And I always seemed, many times in a corporate setting, good people are pushed out because you're playing musical chairs and their chair just was taken away. And it's not necessarily that those people did a bad job or that they just didn't fit in with whoever came in. And sometimes those people were good people, sometimes they were not. But for some reason, the couple times when I seemed to be about to get the chair that the musical chairs in mine was about to be taken away, my boss's chair was taken away before then. And sometimes I got promoted and sometimes I just got the same job. And then because the landscape kept changing and we had mergers and acquisitions, it always just simply became broader and different, and the business kept evolving on a regular basis. I say that when I began my career in 1972, even though that was a good 20 to 30 years after television had gotten its start, versus what it is right now, it is literally Wright brothers versus Man on the Moon difference.
Yeah.
It is just no bearing to what it was then clearly from a marketing standpoint, but even show development and everything else, that may be more similar than the marketing of those shows. Because it used to be you could do on-air promotion and you talk about TV Guide, and many people who are listening don't actually know what TV Guide is, but it was a big thing at one point. And a little bit of radio, and that's you could market the shows, and so the on-air promotion was a big piece of it. Now the on-air promotion, the numbers are so small at the broadcast networks that quite honestly, the word of mouth was always the most influential. Probably the on-air promotion was second, but now on-air promotion not only the most influential, but it's also the most important, because otherwise it costs too much money to get any sense of awareness for a launch of a new show when there are literally 500 or so new shows or new series being launched every year, and so many different places to see them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember back, and we don't like going too far back because we don't want to bore the audience. We'll excite ourselves and have a wonderful conversation, but we always want to keep the youths of America. And
right.
Trying to get some wisdom. Back when ABC would not take a commercial from HBO, like, no, we're not going to promote them. We'll talk about whatever. And so a question that you and I actually talked about was John Miller is chairman of the marketing council for the NBC Universal company that is spinning out, SpinCo. We won't go too deep into that, but Comcast has made a decision to take, really, I would say, more of the traditional entertainment assets, not Peacock, right? So it's mostly the cable,
Yeah.
et cetera. How do you reach an audience now? You talked about data is important, got a little bit, but you were there for Peacock launch and
Yeah.
doing some of that. So,
Well, still the probably one of the biggest thing that they have going, just because of the level of frequency of inventory and the fact that it actually still has a mass in older viewers, not necessarily the younger viewers, is still the television network. But the television network is not part of SpinCo.
right.
Basically, what SpinCo is the cable properties, some of which were big at one time. USA, CNBC, and MSNBC still are. As a matter of fact, of all the ones that are going in SpinCo, which are the about 6 channels that are being spun off from what is NBC Universal, for those people who are not familiar with what we're calling SpinCo, which is simply a holding name for the new company, the cable channels that are spinning off from the company. It's been very difficult to get them. The audience that's on those channels anymore is really small, and they still make money because they still do get some advertising. A lot of it's direct response stuff that goes on there. But they also get a significant amount of distribution fees,
Right.
at least, and those are part of the deals that came with the full NBC and sports and Olympics and football and NBA soon coming. And so all of those deals were based on things that they will not necessarily have the rights to anymore.
Yeah.
Now they can sub-license things and they can do some other things, but it's really going to be real interesting to do that. And as a result, they made Mark Lazarus, who's going to be the CEO of the organization. One of his hires was to head up entertainment. It's a woman named Val Borland, who is actually very good at what she does. She's in acquisitions and for Peacock and a bunch of other things. Well, she knows everything that's out there and the prices for everything out there. And so if for the things that, in order to make those entertainment channels meaningful, she's going to be able to have to buy some of that stuff. And so I think that their plan initially for those channels will be a buying platform where they have some of the older things, and I think they can probably brand those up a little bit. I don't know how much live stuff. The real question for me in that deal, other than the complications of the sports rights, which I think they can work out through sub-licensing arrangements, was most specifically MSNBC and to a later degree CNBC, because the infrastructure of news on those is with NBC News, and that still remains part of the original company with NBC.
Yeah.
And so that's an untangling that I don't know that they have yet figured out.
But they're going to need
it's going to be significantly complicated.
They're going to need a giant marketing budget, it sounds like, John. So you need to, brush up your resume.
Well, the marketing budget that Peacock has for paid media is about 8 times the largest budget that I ever had at running the marketing and television network.
Wow.
Mostly because now I still had more value because at one point during like the must-see TV era, which is the late 90s, mid to late 90s, the value of the on-air promo time on the NBC television network was close to $1.4 billion.
Yeah.
I didn't need $1.4 billion, but we used it for a variety of different things. But that's what it was. The value of an NBC marketing right now, I wouldn't dare to guess, but it's significantly less.
Yeah.
Because we were in year 2000, we were averaging, I know this is going to be too wonky. We were averaging an 8 adult to 18 to 49 rating. Now the average rating, adult 18 to 49 rating for any of the networks is a 0.3.
I think you were saying that everything's a 0.3. Did I read that?
Just about, yeah, everything's
a 0.3.
Yeah, ooh, they won the night. What'd you get? 0.3. Oh, we lost the night. What'd you get? 0.3. So it's okay. Maybe we got a 0.2 for that one, and engagement goes up to 0.4. The only thing it scores really is big time sports, pretty much, and occasionally a big event, Oscars, Grammys.
I did just read that Landman had 15 million viewers in its premiere on Paramount.
Well, it all depends on how those are counted.
Yeah, of course.
You know, the Olympics, the London Olympics, got 217 million viewers. Now, that's the average of that is
Yeah.
anybody that watched up to 6 minutes
Right.
through those 17 days.
Yeah.
That counted as a person, and you add up all of those persons, it was 270 million. Now, by all accounts, and I got this from Rick Cordella, who runs sports for NBC now, the Paris Olympics was very successful, and they had a significant amount of people. And oftentimes they would say that they had 40 million a night, but it was 40 million a night on any way they could get it, which was digital and over the air and on cable and Peacock and everything. And yes, it was, but so the counting is a little bit different than it was.
And it's uncheckable, really, because there's no one who can actually get into the data to a depth.
Yeah,
but
I did ask him from a total reach perspective, did you get over 200 million? And he said, we don't look at that anymore.
We only look at the stuff that we like. All right, I'm going to turn the table and ask Tony that. So, Tony, if you were selling Budweiser, do you have any idea of what? Because I know you stay close to the company. What? I mean, to me, marketing is just like, what? How would you find, other than spending a gazillion dollars? I mean, and getting some good word of mouth somehow. Well, we saw what happened with Bud Light. That certainly was marketing 101. But how do you reach a marketer? I mean, how do you reach a customer these days? I mean, sports seems to be a good one.
To oversimplify, you have to follow the consumer. So you have to know where the consumer's going and be open to that. Just thinking about John, and we all did, started with 3 television networks. That's how simple it was. And you reference that, John, and then where it is today. So, and how people say, why would anyone want 24/7 sports? We're not taking HBO advertising. So as an advertiser, you have to be open to, okay, where are things going and where's the consumer going? And then the marketing message, which John did with television shows, which to me are a brand, and I'm sure to John are a brand, versus Budweiser and Bud Light, is how are you talking to the consumer in the vehicle called that show, whether it's the Super Bowl or Seinfeld or what have you. That's where most marketers miss the mark, which is their conversation is either too narrow to an audience, that their other audience in the mix of someone, whatever the brand is, let's use beer, 21 to 75. If you're talking to a 21 to 25-year-old message, anyone over that saying, you're not talking to me, so I got to go find someone that's relevant. So whether that's the creative message or the show that has to stay relevant, you're ultimately connecting to that consumer to say, I want to live in this space, whether it's show programming or the product itself. John,
I have a follow-up question for you. Because most of what I did was launch new shows. Quite honestly, if you could get people to sample, they would either say, I like that or I don't. And usually after 3 episodes, our ability to influence additional ratings fell significantly. Then it really turned over to word of mouth, because we can entice them to sample a show,
right?
And you figure out which asset you're the best way to position that. But each one was sort of a bespoke property that you were having to sell. In selling Budweiser, where you're basically selling a parody product that hasn't changed for years, and you're having to say, okay, why Budweiser versus Miller or Coors or somebody else? How do you do that? That seems actually like a tougher job to me. Now, as a result, you developed great creative, and the Clydesdales and things like that engendered a sense of warmth and passion about it that were somehow then translated to the beer. But if you did a taste test in beer, Budweiser, would everybody be able to tell the difference? You can pretty much tell the differences at Seinfeld or ER. You can tell those shows apart. But for the Budweiser and or beer, those are closer together, and they haven't changed. So how did you deal with that?
Well, it's a good question, and yeah, and to most people, they would have trouble probably telling the difference. They can tell, say, a light beer from a regular beer or
Yeah,
a craft beer, but beyond that, I think the general consumer, unless you're a real diehard, but you're again. So Budweiser was, to your point, tradition, history, the workers' beer, Americana. When Bud Light came out, which is okay, we know there's a light beer category because Miller Lite's been out there for 7 years all by itself. But how do we not step on Budweiser's toes? So that positioning became more of a more co-ed, more lifestyle, uh, you know, things like surfing and beach volleyball and stuff like that. So we didn't step on the more traditional sports. And then over time, Bud Light, quite frankly, became the number one beer in my time over Budweiser because it started to speak to a broader spectrum of people. Mick Ultra, to show you the interesting thing, Mick Ultra started because our CEO, August Bush III at the time, said the baby boomer is going to stop drinking as much beer as they used to. Keep in mind, the baby boomer kept their beer preference for a long time. Beer was about 60% of all alcohol consumed. Now it's like 45%. He said, I have to have a beer brand that's low on calorie, low on carb, and a little less alcohol than even Bud Light. Tucson, Arizona, Naples, Florida, two test markets. We learned in a very short period of time that everyone was interested in this positioning. Again, a positioning of the commercials were at your lunchtime, rather than going to have a Big Mac, no pun intended, I like Big Macs or criticism there, go do a run, go do a workout and come back, or have a Mick Ultra after a golf round versus whatever. That brand today is the number one beer brand at Anheuser-Busch over Bud Light and over Budweiser.
really.
Yeah. So a couple of things. One is you have to keep evolving, understand the consumer, what they want, and realize if you don't keep inventing, you will become a mirror image of yourself. If Mick Ultra wasn't there, particularly with the fiasco that happened with Bud Light, that's we touched on that. That's a whole other episode. They'd be a whole different company. So you have to keep evolving. So and NBC is in a way doing it with Peacock and streaming and the spin out. It's like and sort of to come full circle, wisdom circle, from the person who started with 3 television networks to watching everything happen. If the John Miller crystal ball went out, let's just say 5 years, what do you see?
5 years from now?
Yeah.
Well, it's always tough to fully say, but I think that the number of streamers probably remains somewhat constant because I think that's just the amount that people can afford, and more of the streaming will have advertising as part of it because in order to afford the choice and to remain competitive with the big players, which really is Netflix and Hulu and Amazon, and that's mostly those, and then the other ones, Max and Peacock, and then there's sort of the lesser group. But in order for those to remain viable, they will have to have advertising, so that more of them will have advertising, or at least an advertising tier. And then there's some that won't. And I would see a migration of sports eventually going to the streamers because that's where the money is.
Yeah.
Although the big leagues will want to have still the networks in play because the networks provide the only place where you can actually provide 100% reach.
Right.
Now, there's some people that don't really get NBC or CBS or the traditional Fox or ABC, but they can. At least they have the ability to get it. And so that would be sort of the changes that make. I see more little sports migrating to the streaming services over time, but those are long deals. They're like 5 to 10 year deals, and so that's going to take a while for that to happen. But I see the number of original shows going from just an explosion, which happened when everybody was trying for market share, to a more reasoned amount. And then even that reasoned amount is likely going to be between 400 and 500 original shows or series, new ones a year.
Yeah.
And so it's still, the choice is going to be huge. And, you know, the broadcast fare, which tends to do very well on streaming services because they are eminently watchable. They may not be as buzzy as some of the other ones, but I think that some of that will go to individual platforms. And so you will see a mix of the very eclectic as well as the traditional, all living in the same place.
Ray, why don't you take us home? I think we're probably time to wrap up. It's interesting. We could probably talk all day.
Like I said, this could be a master class for another hour.
It's really fun to connect with you and legends in your own way.
In our own
I'm just happy to join the party for a period of time.
It was great to have you, John. And I think it was perfectly summed up right there because it really kind of launches into the rest of 25 and the next 5 years. I mean, I'm glad you guys took some shots at it. I'm still going to try to figure it out. I'm going to be patient, let that wisdom bubble up on what I really think is going to happen. But needless to say, John, we would love to have you back because we need to do it. So
I'm happy to come back. I'm after my 50 years, I am working on a book called "How I Ruined American Culture: A Love Story."
Great title.
And I do have four chapters almost already written. My early life, which versus compares to what it is now, which is craziness. And then the whole Must-See TV era, and then The Apprentice, my experience with him, and that's a good one. And then I'm now in the middle of my Olympics chapters, but
great fun.
So
great
there's
fun.
some. I just that's the diligence I need to do. My goal is to get through with it this year.
Good for you. Well, thank you for joining us in the Wisdom Circle, and we do look forward to having you back. So
great, good seeing you both.
Good to see you. Have a great 25.
Okay,
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
See you.